So good evening, everybody. My name is Adrian Esposito. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. There's a lot going on right now in the world of energy and renewable energy. Wind power has blown into Long Island like nothing else we've ever seen. We currently, if you're keeping up, have 5 wind farm proposals off of our coastlines. And, if you think about it, 5 years we had 0. And also in the United States of America, I think it's worth noting, we only have 1 offshore wind farm. It's a small one, but it counts. And it's 5 turbines off of Block Island. That small wind farm does supply the electricity for Block Island. And Orsted, who's with us tonight, is a company that built and runs that one. So what we wanted to do is give folks an opportunity to hear directly from these wind companies to say, what are you proposing? Where would it be? And how would it be built? We know that there's 5. There's a smaller one on the east end of Long Island called the South Fork Wind Farm. And unfortunately, there was a lot of misinformation that got circulated by some, a lot of non-science-based myths that started spreading. So the purpose of what we're doing, and we work with a bunch of wonderful organizations, not only across Long Island, but across New York State, to provide for you science-based, fact-based information so you can be better informed and have a more educated opinion about offshore wind. If you'd like more information, please go to windworkslongisland.org. That is a website of a growing coalition of groups, labor, environment, faith-based groups, and other stakeholders that have come together to really have a genuine science-based information setting about offshore wind. So we have, and we're very excited to have with us tonight, both Orsted and Equinor. Orsted has 2 wind farms that have been proposed and are being advanced here in New York State, and Equinor has 3. So we're going to start with Jennifer Garvey, who's representing Orsted. I'm supposed to make a housekeeping announcement. We are going to take question and answers. Each presenter is only going to take like 15, at the most 20 minutes. And then we're going to take questions and do answers for folks. So if you could please put your questions in the Q&A section. Some of you have already emailed in a bunch of questions, which we didn't ask you to do, but you are being aggressive and studious, and we like that. So I just want our presenters to keep these questions in mind. Some people want to know the general things. How far offshore will they be? Will they be in visual range? How will they be? Will they be in shipping lanes? Which I just want you to know, no. Will marine mammals be protected? What will be the short-term and the long-term electrical cost to consumers? And somebody is also asking here about hurricanes. And so there's a lot more questions, but I wanted to name a few so that the presenters could keep them in mind as we get more information in this program. So without further ado, and we also will have polls that will pop up. They're only going to be 1 question. You don't need to study for them. But please, when they pop up on the screen, just quickly answer them, and then we're going to move on. So Jennifer Garvey is here representing Orsted, and she's going to talk to us about 2 projects. One is the South Fork Wind Farm, which is about 35 miles off of Montauk. And the other one is called Beacon Wind, which Jennifer will tell you is about 50 miles off of Montauk, but it's a much larger project. So Jennifer, can you put your video on so we can see you?
Yes. Oh, hi there. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you. And so I'll put up my slides here now. Just tell me when they look when my screen looks the way it should.
Okay.
Here. This is always the fun part, right? Should we all be experts at this by now? Oh, hold on. One moment. Nope. Why is it not finding my? Sorry, folks. Hang on one moment.
The suspense is killing us, Jennifer.
I know. I apologize. I can't. It's for some reason it's not showing my PowerPoint window. Let's see here.
Do you want us to have Julia and Beth go first, and then you could work that out?
If you would like, sure. I apologize for the delay. I don't know why it's not coming up. 1 second. I don't mean to put them on the spot.
They're seasoned pros. They should be fine.
Up to you, Jennifer. Either way.
Let's make a call. All right, so we're going to move on. Jennifer's going to get her PowerPoint up. Julia Bove and also Beth. And Beth, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce your name correctly. Is it Tressida?
Tressida, yeah.
Tressida, okay. Are both here from Equinor. Equinor is a Norwegian wind company. And they're going to talk to us about the 3 projects that they are advancing here in New York State. Empire Wind 1, Empire Wind 2, and what's the third one's name?
Beacon Wind.
Beacon Wind. Okay, sorry.
All right.
So take it away, Beth and Julia.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for taking time on a Monday night to listen to these presentations. And I know Beth and I are both really eager to answer questions. So I'm going to talk first about Empire Wind, and then I'm going to pitch it over to Beth to talk about Beacon Wind. So that's how we'll structure this, but we're both pretty gung-ho on our projects and where New York is at the moment with offshore wind. So we started the year with a bang. We had great news at Equinor that the 2 projects that we bid into this latest New York procurement both won. That's Empire Wind 2 and Beacon Wind. And this last New York procurement was interesting because it required the developers to partner with port operators or port developers and have a proposal for a port in each of the offshore wind projects. So in addition to winning 2 massive new projects, we also won the privilege to pay for and build 2 massive new ports. So it's a really exciting time for sure. So who's Equinor? We are a Norwegian company, and we were founded about 40 years ago by the Norwegians who decided that they wanted to see if they had oil and gas off their shores, but they knew that there was no private company that would be crazy enough to go out into the conditions of the North Sea and figure it out. So it's sort of what we think of in Equinor as our Norwegian heritage, that we like to be bold, we like to do things that no one's done yet. And that's certainly the case with our offshore wind portfolio. We've been building offshore wind primarily in the UK, but also in other parts of Europe for more than 10 years now. And we also built the first floating wind projects in the world. But here in New York, fixed bottom offshore wind is really the best suited for this area. So we have Empire Wind 1, and that is the project that we had the fortune to win back in 2019. It's an 816 megawatt project. Now, when I refer to this, which is our lease area, New York lease area, I call it the pizza slice. I didn't make that up. I can't remember who did. But Empire Wind 1 is the pointy end of the pizza slice.
Julia, do you have slides?
Yeah, can you not see them?
No.
Oh, well, you probably wonder what the heck I'm talking about. All right, sorry.
You know, good thing we did a practice run on this.
Yeah, funny. Okay.
Now we can see them, Julia.
Good. So this is where I was. I was here. Yes. All right. So thank you for speaking up, Adrian.
Well, you know, that's never been a problem for me.
And that's one of the things I love about Long Island, right? It's one of the things that makes this a challenge and actually makes my job a lot easier, because my job is to make sure that we consult with all of our stakeholders to know how people feel, what they want to see, what they don't want to see, and luckily our culture here makes that not too hard. So a little bit more about Empire Wind 1. We plan to use gravity-based foundations. Those are made of concrete, and they're unique because they can be actually made here in New York. We plan to construct the project, which means putting together the different parts of the components at South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. And I'll talk more about South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, SBMT, a little bit later. We also plan to have our operations and maintenance base at SBMT and to interconnect our power in Brooklyn as well. We'll use the next generation of turbines. I know other developers can tell you exactly what model, make and model they're going to use. We are waiting because we want to get the very latest technology. These things are getting bigger all the time. We're going to start construction 2023. We've got to build the ports before we can build the projects. And so that's going to be at least 3 or 4 years of construction. And then this project, which will be our first, will be delivered into New York in the mid-2020s. So then what happened back in January? We won this latest award, and the two projects together, Empire Wind 2 and Beacon, total 2,500 megawatts, which in New York, that's about 1.3 million homes. It's really a large award. In the bids, we had a total of $47 million in workforce development. And in New York, that can be innovation, it can be direct community benefits, job training, other ways that we can help speed the energy transition. And when we do community benefits, they're really in partnership with communities. We also pledged $25 million to support regional monitoring of wildlife and commercial fish stocks. We want to continue to work with the state on its Offshore Wind Training Institute. We know that there are several institutions on Long Island, particularly Farmingdale and Stony Brook, that are working on that, as well as the Maritime Institute in the Bronx. Total, with these two projects and their ports, we're looking at around 5,200 direct jobs. Larger numbers when you look at induced or associated, but we're just talking about the direct ones here. And then the combined output, the combined additional value to the New York economy, $4.5 billion. So let me talk first about Empire Wind 2. Like I said, Beth will then take over and talk about Beacon. So this project is 1,260 megawatts, and we plan to interconnect the power right in the area of town of Hempstead, Long Beach. So we're studying potential environmental and ecosystem issues there, and then looking at how we would then run the cable from the landfall to the substation, which is near the Barrett power plant. We suspect that construction will also begin in 2023 with commercial delivery in 27. And we also plan to use gravity-based foundations at Empire Wind 2. And just a little bit about those. These are different from other types of foundations, which usually are basically giant steel tubes that are pile driven into the seabed. Those are still an important technology for a lot of places and a lot of projects. But our goal here is to find New York content, New York jobs, and also to minimize any potential effect on marine mammals. So doing the GBSs, or as many of them as we can, will help minimize that. So I mentioned ports, that we had ports in our wind proposals. So for us, what we have been hoping for ever since we got this lease area was for New York to have a world-class offshore wind marshaling and assembly port. So that means that the components come in from all over the world or right here in New York, and they're brought to the port, and then workers assemble them and bring them out assembled to the lease area. So 73 acres is a really great size for an offshore wind port because these components are massive. They need room to move them around. This is a large investment, $280 million. This was a working port right up until the 60s and 70s, but it needs tremendous amount of improvements in order to be able to support the weight of the components and just get it ready for this century. We're also going to be investing a lot in port electrification to minimize the greenhouse gas pollution that could come from a working port. So you can tell probably we're excited about SBMT, and not only is it the site of the assembly port, but it's also where we plan to build our long-term operations and maintenance hub. So this is basically our home base for the long-term operations of the project, 25, 30 years. the crew who maintains the project will work on a 2-week on, 2-week off rotation, and the service operation vessel will come in from the lease area once every 2 weeks for reprovisioning, go back out. It's not a work schedule that a lot of New Yorkers are used to. Certainly, there are some folks on the North Shore of Staten Island who work that way, but in places like Texas and Norway, it's really not uncommon. And luckily, we have a good number of years now to get our permanent workforce hired and trained, and set these expectations for what working on the project is going to be like.
Can you just mention again where the port's going to be located? Because we have a question coming in.
Sure. So it is the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which is in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. So from this picture, this is a simulation of what it will look like. This area is largely empty right now. So I would be sort of floating above the East River with my back to the Brooklyn Bridge, looking south toward the Verrazano. That's the Verrazano right there, if that helps.
Thank you.
And so Staten Island's over here, and this is Brooklyn. As you continue going out and way back out there, you see the tip of the Rockaways. So, and that's this red vessel here. That's what the service operation vessel will look like. And it just so happens that this long-term operations maintenance hub will also be at South Brooklyn Marine Terminal at the northern edge. It's not in this drawing, but it's sort of right around in this area. So another exciting element of the recent award is our plan to build the towers for the wind turbines at Port of Albany. This was an ambitious proposal that Equinor worked on with 2 partners and the Port of Albany to come up with a way to add additional New York content on top of the gravity-based foundations. So this was a huge effort that really has resulted in an excellent plan. Again, these are 300 long-term jobs that folks will work in this factory and make these towers, but then also potentially make what's called transition pieces, which is what attaches the tower to the wind turbine foundation, regardless of what type of foundation is used. So the towers and transition pieces from this factory can be used by any and all developers, not just Equinor. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so she can share hers, and we'll pivot from Empire to Beacon.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. And please bear with me 1 second while I get this up in the proper mode.
That's perfect.
Can you see it? Perfect.
Yep.
Great. Thanks so much, Julia. And needless to say, a lot of what Julia talked about applies very much to Beacon Wind, but I'll give a little bit more detail about the Beacon Wind project in particular, because obviously being the first phase of the project, I think a lot of people are less familiar with it than our Empire Wind project. So a couple facts about Beacon Wind. As I mentioned, it is the first phase of this lease area. So as you can see, we're intending to develop the northern portion of the lease area first. And the lease area is about 60 miles east of Montauk and 20 miles south of Massachusetts. So its nearest point to shore is Massachusetts. We'll be delivering 1,230 megawatts of power into New York, into one of the Astoria substations in Queens. And we're intending for construction in 2025 and then to deliver power in 2028. As you can imagine, the cable route is a little bit longer than it is from our Empire Wind lease area. And so we're intending to use high voltage direct current technology. And I have a little slide on that later. But that's the first time that we'll be deploying this technology in the US offshore wind industry. So very excited about that. And Julia mentioned our work at the Port of Albany. So we'll be utilizing New York fabricated offshore wind towers. So very excited about that partnership as well. This holds true for all of our projects, but in development, we really look to balance 3 key elements. Making sure the project is technically feasible is obviously critically important. Making sure that it's safe, that we have the fewest environmental impacts and fewest use conflicts, and that we collaborate with all of our stakeholders is critically important. And then last but not least, that we deliver power at an acceptable price to our customers in the state. So that's sort of our overarching philosophy as we evaluate all of the different components of the project. With that in mind, we've scheduled our permit applications to be submitted early next year. We have ongoing stakeholder engagement during that time. We'll be conducting additional environmental assessments and developing our permit applications. And then, as you can see, as I mentioned, we'll plan to enter construction in the 2025 timeframe. Just a little note, since we've acquired the Beacon Wind lease area, we've been looking at different ways that we can innovate. You know, having the expertise from our Empire Wind lease area has allowed us to sort of take that and then build upon it. And so one of the things that we've done is looked at different ways we can contribute to research and innovation. So for our survey work in the lease area, we engaged a vessel that used a remotely operated vehicle and towed it, allowing it to operate very close to the seabed, and it increased our operational window because it wasn't as subjected to weather, cutting our operation time in the water, and it also reduced the impact on surrounding wildlife by reducing the noise in the water column and just having that vehicle right next to the seabed. We've been contributing to research and also looking at ways that we can not only mitigate impacts on marine mammals, but also improve the technology to detect marine mammals and look at different ways that we can be more effective in our mitigation. So we've recently funded a study to look at different imaging technologies for whale detection. This too applies to all of our projects in our portfolio. We engage heavily with fisheries. We've been doing so since 2017, thanks to our Empire Wind lease area. So, we've listed here some of what we do, but of particular note, we have monthly port hours and we have communications that we issue. And so if folks are interested in that, they should please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to include folks on that outreach. I mentioned earlier that the project will be using HVDC cables. So utilizing HVDC enables us to carry the maximum amount of power to New York efficiently. We can put 1,200 megawatts of power into a single cable bundle. So under this approach, the HVDC cable will be delivered to a landfall location, and then the cables will connect to a converter station on shore. And so that's where we will convert the power back to HVAC to connect into the grid. So in order, I say all that to point out here, we have an illustration. Again, none of this is, the location is not finalized. We're still in commercial discussions, but what we ended up doing is selecting Astoria, Queens as our point of interconnection. We looked at a lot of different points of interconnection, but Astoria ultimately offered benefits that were not available anywhere else. Some of those were, available real estate. Obviously, that's critically important. We very strongly believe that the project goals in delivering clean energy and improving air quality very well aligned with community goals. We're able to convert an existing industrial site to renewable power, which is also important. The site allows us to have very limited onshore impacts because it's wholly accessible to water. So, not using public lands and roads. And then also, obviously on the technical side, we needed existing interconnection capacity. So I mention this because we're currently refining our cable routes to Astoria, and that requires routing through very sensitive environmental areas, namely the Long Island Sound. So we're looking at all different types of constraints in the Sound, and in the process of engaging with a variety of agencies and representatives, so state agencies, fisheries representatives, communities in New York and Connecticut, the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Defense, a variety of different stakeholders to refine that route. So anyway, we're excited to continue to mature this cable route and our onshore plans, and happy to provide any more information about any of the above.
Okay, thank you. And I just make sure, please, that you add the Long Island Sound Citizen Advisory Committee to that list of stakeholders that you're engaging with. I'm the outreach chair or the public policy chair, and I know we have Nancy Seligson is participating right now on this website, on this forum. She is the New York chair of the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Long Island Sound Study. So,
absolutely, and thanks for that. I'll, if you are interested, I really appreciate outreach, and I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat for folks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, please answer the quick poll that has suddenly appeared before you like magic. While you're doing that, Jennifer, did you find what you needed?
Yeah, my slides are on they've been on my screen. There it is. Okay, it just appeared.
Good.
Okay, and let me see here.
Okay, for everyone, Beth has put her email in the chat. Yes, sorry. If anybody needs to speak more with Equinor. Okay, we're going to take this. Oh, people are still answering it. Sorry. We're going to wait 10 more seconds.
Adrienne, can you see my slides now?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay.
Okay, Hannah, if you could take the poll off, that would be great. Okay. All right. Now back to Jennifer Garvey representing Orsted. Please go ahead, Jennifer.
Great. Thank you and good evening, everyone. And thank you for your patience with my slides, and to the Equinor team for jumping in there. So I'm from Orsted, U.S. Offshore Wind, and together we have a partnership with Eversource, and we are building two projects for New York: South Fork Wind and Sunrise Wind. South Fork Wind will actually be New York's very first offshore wind farm, and it will deliver power to the town of East Hampton. Sunrise Wind is also a project that was awarded through the first offshore wind procurement that was run by NYSERDA back in 2000, or the award was announced back in 2018, and that is a larger project. And so let me first tell you a little bit about who we are, and then I'll get a bit into our project details. But first, let me just say that what an exciting time, and obviously as you're talking about ports and infrastructure and all that, Orsted is actually the global leader in offshore wind, and so I have so many colleagues that have been a part of this story across the pond, so to speak, and it's really exciting to go with them to places, to ports, and to hear them speak about, their experience having been at places before they were offshore wind ports and how quickly all of this happened. So it's such a transformative experience, and it's a really exciting time for New York, for Long Island, for the East Coast certainly, and should be quite a dramatic transformation here in a short amount of time. So first off, as I mentioned, Orsted is a renewable energy company. They were the first actually to build offshore wind. They put offshore wind turbines off the coast of Denmark back in 1991. And I like to say they've never looked back. Since then, they have developed, constructed, and now operate well over 1,000 offshore wind turbines that are spinning around the globe. It's about 25% of all offshore wind in operation today. Eversource is our joint venture partner. Eversource is New England's largest energy provider. They are also a premier transmission developer, and they have roots in New England and in the Northeast for over 100 years. So they know our transmission systems well, and together we really have tremendous expertise and experience to deliver projects for New York. So the offshore wind lease areas that we own together as a joint venture are shown here. Those are the dark blue areas, and you just, for a sense of proximity, you see some of the other offshore wind lease areas, and Beacon Wind is among those out there, the other Equinor parcel. But the dark blue areas, and in particular the two kind of funny shaped parcels to the east, closest to Long Island, are the location of both South Fork wind and Sunrise wind. They're still quite far from shore. The South Fork wind rather will be about 35 miles from the eastern tip of Long Island, Montauk Point. Sunrise wind is about 30 miles east of Montauk Point, and the little dots are, the locations of our points of interconnection. For South Fork, will interconnect in the town of East Hampton, and for Sunrise wind will connect in Holbrook in the town of Brookhaven. So first, just to talk a little bit about South Fork wind, which at this point is quite a mature project. It was first awarded a power purchase agreement back in 2017. This is actually a contract that we have with LIPA, the Long Island Power Authority. For those, I appreciate we're talking to a statewide audience tonight. So Long Island, of course, implies it's our island utility. And this is for a project that will be no more than 15 turbines. It's still quite a small project by today's standards, but cutting edge nonetheless. It will be New York's very first offshore wind farm, and it will, as I mentioned, deliver power to the town of East Hampton. And this was actually a project that was selected through a competitive solicitation to try and understand what was the most cost-effective way to address a particular power supply need out on the east end of Long Island on the South Fork. And that's how this project came about. It was actually awarded together with a couple of other projects from other developers. It was first utility scale battery storage, and also demand energy response programming. And it was together identified as a portfolio solution that was the most cost effective to address this particular need out there on the South Fork. And so quite a cutting edge portfolio and a cutting edge project at the time. Obviously the game has changed a lot since 2017, but this project is making good progress. We've had a number of important milestones recently. And this is a project, all offshore wind projects rather have to go through multiple layers of permitting. And so the state level permitting, our permit applications were filed back in 2018 for South Fork wind. That's the Article 7 siting process, which is led by the New York State Public Service Commission. Similarly, the federal permitting application for South Fork wind was filed in 2018. That's the construction and operations plan, which is submitted to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the federal agency that oversees development of what's happening on the Outer Continental Shelf. And so those two applications are making their way. We did have an important milestone this summer. We've come a long way in the Article 7 permitting process. We had 11 months of settlement negotiations where community members and community organizations and a number of state agencies and the towns of East Hampton, the town representatives in East Hampton, the trustees of East Hampton, which is a local body that has jurisdiction over the beaches, were all able to be a part of a process to negotiate protections and conditions that will be imposed on the project in the construction phase. So a very lengthy and process, a great opportunity just for engagement, to learn more about the project, to make sure everyone's voices are heard. And the outcome of that was called the joint proposal. It's a long list of draft conditions, which ultimately would be rolled into the Article 7 Certificate of Public Need, which then informs the the final construction drawings, if you will, that the project will be built off of. So long story short, with that milestone behind us, we believe we're on track to hopefully obtain our Certificate of Public Need as early as March of this year. And then the federal process continues as well. This project obviously has been ongoing for some time, and we saw for a period of time some uncertainty at the federal level. We're seeing really positive signs with the new administration, and currently we plan to complete this project by the end of 2023. To begin delivering power by December of 2023. In total, this project will create enough power every year to generate electricity for about 70,000 homes. So an exciting milestone when we get there. And just to give you a quick overview of what this looks like onshore, here's an overview of the onshore route. This is about 4 miles in length. and this is a route that was chosen through an extensive selection process. We have to, the process demands that we look at all different configurations of routes to understand what is the least impactful route to avoid or to minimize impacts to the environment, to the community. And so we arrived at this route, which comes ashore at Wayne Scott Beach and continues about 4 miles to the substation. I will say that this particular project, actually, we're actually required to deliver our power to what's called the East Hampton substation as a virtue of our contract and sort of the some of the context behind the procurement process through which we were awarded this particular project. I did also want to mention the sea to shore transition. Because it is a point of real interest for these projects, what happens when a cable comes ashore. And so we use this process called horizontal directional drilling, which is really, it's a time-tested construction methodology, and it really allows to minimize or really avoid impacts to the beach. It's effectively a smart drill that can start behind the dunes, for example. It can be in a parking lot. In the case of South Fork Wind, we're in a road and we're able to drill very deep beneath the beach and under the nearshore area, which essentially makes sure that the beach remains untouched. Beaches are precious everywhere, particularly on Long Island. And it also makes sure it will make sure that the cable is well protected from erosion over the life of the project. So just an important to understand the methodology here. And so this figure just lays out sort of the step-by-step. First, we drill the borehole using that drill you can see on the left. Part 2 is we pull what's called a conduit sleeve. It's really just a plastic pipe that will be pulled right through that drill path, and then it's set for the cable to arrive. The cable will arrive in a vessel, and it will actually be pulled from the offshore vessel through this sleeve in the ground and up onto shore. And that's how we make sure that the cable stays buried deep beneath the beach and well protected. Also want to, and before I jump to the next project, also wanted to just, a nod to the community out there in East Hampton. Certainly you mentioned some of the opposition that has emerged with respect to this project, Adrian. There's also been a huge amount of support. We're entirely grateful for the many people who have come out to support the project. There has, of course, been some misinformation, which unfortunate, but I think not surprising. Lots of projects face opposition, but it has definitely been a team effort, so to speak, to make sure that everyone understands the great benefits of the project and how hard everyone has worked to make sure that this project is designed to minimize impact to the greatest extent possible. And so a huge thanks to the East Hampton Town Board and the East Hampton Town Trustees, who did recently award us or authorized our real estate agreements, and we've reached terms on a host community agreement as well. It will provide some generous direct investment right to the community.
Jennifer, can I just, people are asking, how does first off, what is the diameter of that particular cable? And also, does it arrive on the beach as DC current? Can you just answer those while we're here on this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So the cable itself, it's a bundled submarine cable. It's no more than 12 inches in diameter, and that includes all of its armoring. So if you were to look at it, you'd see kind of 3 copper pieces in the middle, which is just like a backyard extension cable, if you will, and then surrounded by insulation and armoring. And so, but the entire thing is no more than 12 inches in diameter. And this particular cable will be AC current, alternating current, because of the shorter distance. Yeah, for the I know that we mentioned DC current, and we will be using DC current for our Sunrise Wind project. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so our next project is Sunrise Wind. And as I mentioned, Sunrise Wind was awarded at the same time that the Empire Wind project was awarded as part of the first offshore wind procurement that NYSERDA hosted. NYSERDA, of course, is the keeper of New York's master offshore wind plan. This is quite a large project, 880 megawatts and power for over 500,000 New Yorkers. And so this, similar to what you saw the lease area previously, this project will be located over 30 miles from Montauk, and a submarine export cable too will be used to deliver power into the town of Brookhaven. The particular point of interconnection is in Holbrook. This This particular project will use the DC cable similar to Beacon Wind. And this is a project that's currently due to come online at the end of 2024. Fair to say that because of some of the uncertainty we've seen at the federal level, we have indicated that completion date might get pushed back a bit. But obviously we've seen great support from, or we're seeing great signs of support from the federal government under the new administration. So we're always looking for opportunities to compress our project timelines and come as close to meeting that original 2024 date as we can. This too is Sunrise Wind also mentioned, this is obviously a much bigger project, but it really represents just a tremendous investment, hundreds of millions of dollars, 800 direct jobs, lots of indirect jobs as well. And I'll say all of our projects will be built, with a commitment to prevailing wages, and we have and project labor agreements. That's something we've, been committed to for some time. And certainly Union Labor has been a great supporter of offshore wind, and we certainly intend to do an awful lot of work with them. Sunrise Wind has a number of other economic development features. We have committed to seed funding what's called the National Offshore Wind Workforce Training Center. And this is really a terrific collaboration with a number of different groups representing industry, of course, academia and labor. This is an initiative that will be for which the Suffolk County Community College will serve as the academic anchor arm, and our partners in labor are also, equal parts in this initiative. And really, it's we're working towards GWO training, which is, you could consider that the passport to offshore wind is a particular type of training that you need to have in order to work offshore. There's a bunch of very specific requirements, working at heights, working in the water, that type of thing. But that's where this particular initiative is headed, and we're delighted to have the partners that we do. We also have a commitment to establishing a workforce development fund in the capital region, where we're also intending to do secondary steel fabrication to support the construction of Sunrise Wind. And so that's another fund that is envisioned just to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities that are coming in offshore wind, and to ensure that the workforce is prepared and well trained to accept that opportunity as it comes. We do hope to be announcing vendors as early as the second quarter of this year, who will be a part of that secondary steel component, and some of the work will happen up there in the capital region. Ports, of course, is another huge component of this. And, I will say that the Sunrise Wind bid was really quite, and in lots of ways, it was a very Suffolk County centric bid. We are coming ashore. Our onshore route is in Suffolk County, and there's a major port that will also be located in Suffolk County. We have committed to locate our regional operations and maintenance hub in the Port Jefferson area, one of the few deep water harbors on Long Island. And so we have actually just recently announced a partnership to build the service operation vessel that will house the offshore wind mechanics that will service the wind farms, our portfolio of wind farms for that matter, not just those that are for New York. But it's a very large vessel. We call it, it's kind of like a hotel boat that will generally live offshore, and where the mechanics will stay. But when it does come to port, it will come to port in Port Jefferson on the North Shore of Long Island. Additionally, there's a building that we've recently purchased. It's in East Setauket, so quite nearby to downtown Port Jefferson and to that port. And that's really the brain of our operations and maintenance facilities for our entire Northeast portfolio. So there'll be a host of work streams occurring, at that building, people who will live there full time and work out of there. And so that's an exciting, part of our future here, really cementing an important place for Long Island here in the future of offshore wind. And in addition to other port facilities that will emerge certainly around New York, in addition to the capital region. And so here's a look at the onshore route for Sunrise Wind. This one is quite a bit longer. This one will come ashore at the Smith Point Beach in the town of Brookhaven. And then it will work its way up to the point of interconnection with the local grid in Holbrook. It is a long route, about 17 miles, but we'll take many, it's a really intensive effort to make sure that we can build this and minimize impacts to the greatest extent possible. There's all kinds of things to be done about time of year, time of day, construction restrictions, and otherwise just working closely with the community to minimize those to minimize disruptions and find a way to work in a way that is the least disruptive. That said, this is also a revenue generator. This does represent investment in the community, and similar to what we're doing with the town of East Hampton, we expect to negotiate a host community agreement with the town of Brookhaven as well. Everything I do want to emphasize too that all of our cables are underground. So this is all, there'll be no new overhead transmission. This is all underground cable. So once it's set, you'll effectively never know it's there. The maintenance for an underground cable is at best they'll check on it once every 5 years or so. It's really very low maintenance. I do, again, just want to emphasize that we'll be, again, using this horizontal directional drilling approach to bring the cable ashore. And that also creates an opportunity to do the same for Sunrise Wind, like some other water bodies to cross in order to get to the mainland. You can see that in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. But this is
Jennifer, I'm going to interrupt again with another question real quick because you have
Sure.
the slide up. So
Yep.
And I know Cece is going to get a lot of questions just like this one. So with this cable, are you going to go under the Fire Island, Barrier Island, and then under the Great South Bay? Or will you go, how will that work? Or will it go 10 feet into the Great South Bay? Or can you just talk a little bit about that for 60 seconds?
Yes, absolutely. So we'll use this HUD approach. So we will tunnel from the parking lot at the Smith Point Beach under the beach and near shore zone. Okay, so there'll be so basically there'll be what's called a vault, a transition vault in the parking lot that the cable will be pulled into, and then we'll it's called open trenching. It's just sort of your typical utility work kind of across the parking lot. And then we'll do another horizontal directional drill from the north side of the barrier island, sort of on the west side of the existing bridge, similarly under that sort of intercoastal area to the mainland. And so this same picture to go between the barrier island and the mainland. Does that make sense?
Well, keep going. We're running out of time.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm really at the end here. I just wanted to mention that, of course, minimizing environmental impacts and recognizing all of the stakeholders that do that do use our waters, and both from marine life to those working the waters is critically important to us, of course. I will say for South Fork Wind, we actually changed the layout for of the turbines twice, directly in response to stakeholder feedback. That's how we ultimately arrived at there's a grid layout. It's 1 nautical mile by 1 nautical mile, and it really was intended to provide relief really to the fishing community who felt strongly that was important, and it's allowed us to align with the other developers in sort of a grid across that all of the lease areas, which really support ease of navigation throughout the wind farms. And anyway, I'm sure there'll be more questions about this, but of course, want to emphasize that this is something that is critically important to us. And I'll just pause there because I'm sure there'll be additional questions about this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And if you could stop the screen sharing, that'd be great too. Okay, so now I want to bring back our panelists, Beth, Julia, and Jennifer. And what we're going to do, we have a lot of questions and not a lot of time. So we're going to do what we call the rapid fire answers, which means we're going to ask each of you questions, but please don't, well, I don't know how to say, don't pontificate. Just answer the question succinctly, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so here we go. First one. Okay. How far deep will the cables be buried? Julia, then Jennifer.
A minimum 4 feet beneath the seabed, but much deeper under shipping lanes and other particular areas, and 6 feet below this or lower below the street, and 50 feet below the beach.
Okay, Jennifer, for your projects.
Very similar, at least 4 feet offshore. You know, you saw for South Fork, it's the minimum of 30 feet beneath the beach, and it could well be much deeper depending on, you know, what the geology says.
Okay. Question. Oh, someone wants to know this. Oh, the county legislator would like to know where exactly in Holbrook is the substation, Julia? I mean, I'm so sorry,
That's
Jennifer.
me. Yeah.
So sorry.
Yep. Sure. So, you know, the substation is on the north side of the LIE. And so, you know what, I feel like the best way I should probably just follow up. But we had this really great virtual open house that we did, and we have, you know, loads of information and maps that will allow you to zoom in on it. But it's a little harder to explain without my map up right now. But north side of the LIE, we actually have to cross under the LIE and with, you know, with our cable after we get to our interconnection facility. So, sorry, I'm a little handicapped without my map here, but okay. I'll be happy to send you that.
Please reach out to Suffolk County Legislator Piccarello as often to let him know that. Thank you. Okay, do you guys have any idea for each project how many turbines you might use for each project? Beth, we'll start with you.
So the Beacon Wind lease area has a total of 157 turbine locations. We'll probably use a couple of those for offshore substations. So most likely we'll have 155. The ultimate number that we use will depend on the size of turbine that we select. So I'll say about half of those, but it'll really depend on the size of turbine.
Right. So let me just explain that for the audience. Each, depending on the technology, the turbine could generate 8 megawatts, 10 megawatts. Now they have 15 megawatts. I hear they're using in Albany, right? In Europe. So it's going to depend on the size and the technology of the turbine, and that will then determine the number of them needed, because they're working backwards from the amount of energy generated. But Jennifer, you know the answer though for the South Fork wind farm, right?
Sure, maximum of 15, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And the same thing, we all have what's called an envelope approach where we're allowed to permit different sizes just because, as Beth mentioned, the technology changes very quickly. We've already upgraded our turbine size once because, you know, in 2017, 6 megawatt turbines were state of the art, and they're not anymore.
No, now they're last year's news.
Yeah.
As a general rule of thumb, we use fewer and fewer the larger the turbine, so.
Yep.
Good answer. What does anybody just give an estimate, please, of the height from the sea surface to the lowest tip of the blade?
The lowest tip or the highest tip?
I think they mean how, in other words, between the blade and the sea. So when they're going under it, yes.
About 880.
No, so the bottom one, turn that bottom one as it brushes down.
Here?
Yes, yeah, from there to the sea.
Yeah. I think it's like 40 to 50 meters, right? So times 3, you know, we're, you know, 120 plus feet.
Okay.
I think that's the number.
Okay. We're going to keep going. Thank you. Lots for our rapid. What's the longevity of the turbines?
So engineered design life of at least 25 years.
Okay. Julia and Beth, you agree? Okay.
Yes.
What are you doing about birds? Create safe wind turbines for birds. It's a big question we get at CCE. Julia.
One of the main things that's changed since the 70s when there were bird wind issues, well, 2 things have changed. One, these machines, the blades move very slowly. So they can generate power with very, very slow movement. The other thing is, I mean, we're so lucky to be in the northeastern US. There are decades and decades worth of bird data that we have, and we know where the birds fly and where they don't, and we're very fortunate that they hug the shoreline, even if they're going from Canada to Mexico. So these leased areas were chosen in part to minimize that kind of conflict.
Okay. Somebody's asking, who is going to get the Sunrise Wind Farm's electricity?
So it will connect into, the Long Island grid. This is obviously once power hits the grid, it's hard to say exactly where it's going, so to speak. But this is, power for Long Island, for New York, and it will hit the wires and go where it's needed.
Okay. Let's say Krupski wants to know, how are you deciding exactly where to land the cables? That's such a short question with such a hard answer. But I'll just say they're doing environmental assessments for the least environmentally sensitive areas. They're also, hoping to look for the shortest route. They also have to connect to a substation that has the ability to accept the amount of power that the wind farm will be generating. What am I missing?
No, that's it. It's balancing those things.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate also, yeah.
Real estate available? Yes. Can't go through someone's home.
Yeah, and we have to do really extensive analyses in all of our permits to kind of show the thinking behind our work.
Okay, we're getting a compliment here that it was a great presentation by everybody, and it was unbelievable that it was a wonderful thing. It was all women. We like that. We agree. Are the gravity-based foundations expected to become artificial reefs for the other New York reefs the other New York state has made from sunken materials? Okay, like the other ones, sorry.
Yes, not any more or less than other types, or if they were a monopile or gravity-based. Although there are certain types of concrete now that's being developed specifically to be a carbon sink, to make sure that it takes more carbon out of the air. But we have to balance that with and also a desire not to change the environment more than we have to. So we do hear from recreational fishermen that they love fishing around these things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also don't want to, create impacts that we don't need to. So that's a big balance, and that's something we'll be asking stakeholders about.
Okay. How will wildlife and fish stock monitoring be done? And will it be private or existing state and local agencies taking part in that? Jennifer.
Sure. So we have, in fact, we have a number of researchers going now executing contracts. So we have even studies that we've agreed to as part of our permitting for New York State, and also to support what's happening out of the wind farms. So Stony Brook's in the mix, Cornell Cooperative Extension, some of the locals known on Long Island. There's some others from the New England area as well, scientific outfits. So yes, lots of opportunity to be a part of the science, and we like to use, our very capable entities from New York.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you. Would you put your information, your contact information in the chat for?
Yes. Oh, I had it on a slide that I forgot to show.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, and this is one that we got a lot. Actually, people wrote in this question. I think you've answered the question about will they be far enough offshore? So I'm going to repeat it. It's going to be between, depending on the project, 20 miles to 50 miles offshore. If you can see them with your bionic eyes, good for you. Will surveys be done for underwater cultural resources? The short answer is yes for that. Oh, and we got a lot of questions written into us about shipping lanes. So,
yeah, I'd love to address that. Okay. Because the lease area for Empire Wind was intentionally put between the shipping lanes so as not to get in the way of shipping at all. The shipping lanes in and out of New York Harbor are extremely wide, like 3 times as wide as the ones down in Delaware. So those are very wide, plus they have extra buffer on either side of them. So we're quite confident, and we have historic data going back a long way that this is not a conflict with the shipping lanes. It's important for everyone that New York Harbor is as big an economic engine as it can be.
Right. So fair to say you're very cognizant of the shipping lanes. So is the U.S. Coast Guard, yes. And all these agencies are involved.
Absolutely.
Okay. 2 other quick questions here. This is a fair question. I know I'm going to get this question a lot when we do presentations. Will the Smith Point construction disrupt the park access during construction?
It shouldn't, no. We're only going to need a small part of the parking lot in order to set up for our HDD. We'll also be able to work off season, if you will, in the middle of the winter. So lots of precautions to make sure that we're not disrupting anybody's beach time.
Right.
For sure.
Now that's the only answer Long Islanders will accept.
I get it.
Okay. And also from Michelle here, we have, what impact will the construction, including the laying of the lines, have on the recreational boating in the Long Island Sound? So that's for the that's for the Sunrise Wind Farm.
You know, I think that might apply also to the Beacon Wind Farm, which is planning a cable route to the Long Island Sound. No problem. You know, we anticipate that shallow water cable laying will take about 2 months, not including commissioning and decommissioning. So, you know, obviously we'll be in close coordination with stakeholders to minimize impacts on existing usage. And then, you know, certainly the hope would be that once the cable is laid and buried, it would not have an impact on recreational boating, but we'll continue those conversations.
Okay. Whoops. Thank you. So let me just get one last one in here. Oh, people keep asking for copies of the slides. We will get the slides and we're going to put them on windworkslongisland.org. That's the website of the coalition that is formed that I talked about earlier. So it's windworkslongisland.org. And so last question here, and then I think we're going to just take 2 people with their hands up and then we are done. Can the turbines be retrofitted at their end of their life? So you both said, or all 3 of you said earlier, that they last approximately 25 years. Can they be retrofitted or repurposed at that time?
So a couple of things. We think of them as 25 years. What we've seen with wind turbines onshore, and we expect to see offshore, is that they just keep going, but the new machines in 25 years are so much better that it makes sense for everyone to put new ones up. And then there's some great work going on in Europe and in the US now for recycling the carbon fiber of the blades, which is really exciting.
That is exciting.
Then be used in concrete or, you know, any number of things. Some great work going on.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Good to hear it. All these myths and rumors out there about the graveyard for wind turbines. And I keep telling everyone, well, we only have one in America with 5 turbines. So I don't know how there could be a graveyard that exists with outdated wind turbines. Anyway, okay. So Hannah, I understand there's some people with their hands up. Can you please call on one?
All right, Jane, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Jane Fasula with Sierra Club. Unmute yourself. You can ask a question. Or not. Okay. I'm not on the phone. Okay. All right. Anybody else? You want to call on one last one, Hannah?
Yep. Jeff, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Jeff Twine.
Okay.
Why are people raising their hands and then they don't want to get called on?
All right, Jeff, if you have a question, if not, I'm gonna take you off. We'll put you back in the attendees.
Okay, so let me just say this then. Do we have another poll that you just want to put up real quick, Hannah?
Yes.
So last one, we need to know if you guys want some updates on these wind projects. We're gonna, begin a, an update listserv so that people can be updated. Again, you know this, we have 5 wind farm proposals here in New York State. Some of you asked questions about, well, where does the power go for Sunrise Wind Farm? That's the one that's gonna get connected to the Holbrook station. One person asked a question about the Beacon Wind project, which is going to go into Astoria, Queens. And they said, well, we don't get the power on Long Island, but this is really a New York adventure. I mean, this is really about transitioning New York's power from fossil fuels, where we are today, to renewable energy. And we all benefit when that occurs. As you all know, New York has very high goals for reducing our carbon and adhering to the goals set by the climate protection law that we passed. And East Hampton, for instance, has a 100% renewable energy goal by the year 2030. So we can't reach these goals without wind power. It's not magic. It's not going to be a magic formula. We actually need this to be part of our energy grid to make the transition. And if we change the way we produce energy, we change the world. That is really true. We are on the great precipice of change right now, with New York leading the way. We can do a transition from where we are today to emissions-free power. That was a statement we never could have made 20 years ago. Never. But we can make that statement today. It's going to be hard work. There might be sacrifice involved. Some things unpleasant might occur. But, you know, and we're not saying wind, I just want to say this, and I'm sorry to say this to the wind companies, but we're not saying wind power is perfect. It's not perfect. There's no large scale energy production that's perfect. What we are saying is renewable energy technology, wind and solar, are the best we have right now. And it's what we need to do, you know, to fight climate change. So that's, you know, my commercial announcement. I want to thank everybody. We hardly lost anybody in this whole presentation. Everyone stayed on, which is pretty impressive. So thank you so much to Jennifer and the Orsted team, to both Beth and Julia from the Equinor team. We appreciate it. And I want to thank you guys very much. We look forward to doing future educational events in the future. We need the public to understand this. It's a big change, and there's a lot for them to understand. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.